Hi everyone and welcome back. I'm sure you've seen these viral dot painting videos before, and I've always wondered how well they actually work. Any artist can tell you that it's pretty counterintuitive to apply giant blobs of primary colored paint onto a canvas without mixing the shade you need on a palette first. However, there are loads of YouTube channels that specialize in these paint blob tutorials, so let's take a look at what's really behind this technique. First up, I'm going to use some acrylic paint, flat paint brushes, and a palette knife. I believe a lot of these viral videos use oil paint because that's easier to blend when working on a large canvas. However, I'm just using a very small one here, so I think I can get the same results using acrylics. I'm starting with a random pattern of dots, loosely based on a landscape tutorial by the channel Serena Art. Right off the bat, this feels like a lot of paint for such a tiny canvas, and I'm cringing inside on what's going to happen when I spread it out. Before you start, you do need to prepare some painting supplies. The vast majority of these videos require you to paint more details on top, so the initial dot design is just the background layer. Make sure you have some water, paper towels, a palette, and brushes. Another very important thing is titanium white paint. These dots are very pigmented, so somewhere along the process you need to cut down the saturation using white. The lower part of the image is going to be a water reflection, so I'm adding a blob of white to all the dots along the bottom. Now I'm going in with a flat white brush and blending the paint together. To be honest, this wasn't as bad as I expected, but it wasn't a foolproof process for beginners either. The first and foremost rule is not to overblend. The more you move the brush over one area, the muddier the color becomes. As you can see, I'm keeping my strokes short and choppy and stopping after a few sweeps. If you can see tiny streaks of unblended paint next to each other, then that's even better. This gives your painting more texture and depth. The second rule is to clean your brush before moving on to a new shade. The biggest danger of working with a rainbow gradient like this is to have too many colors touching each other and ending up with a muddy brown or purple. You only want the brush to be touching two complementary shades at any one time. So for instance, you either want to be blending red and yellow, yellow and green, or green and blue. Try to avoid green touching red at all costs because that is quickly going to turn brown and mess up the painting. I had a tiny bit of that happening over here, but luckily I caught it in time. In terms of composition, I want the upper part to be slightly darker and sharper than the lower part. These are going to be trees, so I'm going over them again with a dry brush to create some leafy textures. Then I'm taking a clean brush and dragging the paint on the bottom downwards to create some smooth gradients that look like water. And lastly, I'm painting in a simple blue sky and stopping just before I reach the tree line. Once again, you want to avoid overblending because you don't want to lose these crisp edges and colors. Next, I'm using a mix of dark brown and black. I'm not a huge fan of black paint since it can easily overpower the image, but I realize that these semi-abstract dot paintings need a lot of contrast. So be sure to wait until the existing areas are almost dry before adding any black. As you can see, I'm making a rough land shape, a few trees, and then taking it down towards the front. The asymmetry makes it more interesting to look at and also adds more depth. This part obviously gives off a lot of Bob Ross vibes. A lot of these viral dot paintings use a palette knife for trees, but somehow I couldn't get it to work. Maybe my canvas was too small, or this works better with oil paint. I ended up adding all the branches and grass detail using a paintbrush. The very last step, which really makes everything pop, is adding white highlights. Definitely make sure that everything is completely dry and use pure titanium white. I experimented with a palette knife here for the choppy texture and had quite a lot of fun scraping out the reflections. So here's my final result, and I have to say I'm pleasantly surprised at how it turned out. I was expecting the primary colored paints to overpower everything, but the base gradient ended up pretty decent. Then you just need to add black and white details on top to bring out the landscape. This whole painting took less than 10 minutes to make, so feel free to give it a try if you want a quick and relaxing DIY. I'm actually quite curious to try out more variations of these paintings, so please leave a comment down below if you want to see more. I'm Joanna, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!